Hey guys, it's Courtney, and today I am taking a look at the new Ink on 3 Atelier Inks. Not 100% sure how to pronounce that, but I have received all of the colors. You can see that you have rainbow colors here, as well as a black and a brown. On the back, it will list all of the different properties that these inks have. And if I know anything about Ink on 3, they truly are going to be one of a kind. She comes out with the best inks like no other on the market. You can see that the pad itself is pretty shiny. Obviously, these are brand new. I have not used these yet, so they are nice and inked up and juicy. And first, we are going to go ahead and test out the stamping with them. So I have a piece of Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock here, and I just took a solid image. This image is actually part of a layering stamp set, but it's the most solid image that I could find in my stash. And we're going to go ahead and stamp and label these out so that you guys can see the colors that they have. And they stamp beautifully. Perfect stamped impression. And the foam pad or the ink pad itself is very squishy. You don't have to press too hard. Let me just say that with your stamp. They almost kind of sort of remind me of the pad that's on the Catherine Pooler inks, where you just kind of have to tap it on there, but they do absolutely stamp beautifully. Now, I also noticed I have my stamp chamois off to the side that you guys can't see, but each and every time that I was cleaning off my stamp, I did notice that there was quite a bit of ink left over on my stamp. And this is a solid image, so that doesn't always happen, you know, having an even amount of ink still left on the stamp after doing your stamping. So after I stamp out all of these main colors, I'm just going to call them the main colors here, I'm going to test out the second and third generation stamping, because based on the ink that's left over on these stamps when I'm cleaning them off, I have a feeling that these would be great for that, so that you can get a whole variation in color with just one ink pad. So I'm just finishing up stamping out these rainbow colors, and look at how bright and vibrant that blue is. Unbelievable how perfect these stamp out. So I'm just going to finish off with this purple here, and then I'm going to take another piece of the Neenah Solar White, and I'm going to test out the brown and the black. And we're going to do some second and third generation stamping here. So I'm going to start off with the brown color. I'm going to use the same stamp because, like I said, it is the most solid image that I have. Going to ink that up really good and then stamp a second and third time. So you'll see that once I stamp the first time, you're getting a really vibrant, I guess you could say, if brown is vibrant, vibrant image. Then I'll stamp again and again one more time, and you get 3 different variations of that color. It's unbelievable how perfect these stamp second and third generation. I know you can do this with a lot of inks, dye inks and pigment inks and all of that, but I always find that the second and third tend to be a little bit blotchy and you don't necessarily get that great of impression. This is completely opposite. You can get 3 different colors, probably 4. I probably could have stamped another time, with one ink pad, and each image, each time I stamped, it came out perfect. Same thing with this black. Now I did notice this isn't black. It's more of like a charcoal gray, which I'm fine with because I'm going to mainly do watercoloring and stuff with this. I'm not going to be stamping my sentiments with it. But you can see, again, second and third generation, absolutely perfect. I'm so impressed with the way these stamp out. Now, these are also water reactive. So I did take a damp paintbrush just to kind of see if I could spread out some of this color once I stamped out the images, and I certainly could. This is not watercolor paper, this is Neenah, so I'm not going to get that great of results, but they definitely did react with water once I did stamp them out. So another great property that I've heard about these inks is that they are really good for ink blending, and I love ink blended backgrounds. So I'm going to try out some ink blending, and I'm using another piece of Neenah here, and I'm using a couple of the Blending Buddy brushes by Trinity Stamps. And I'm going to just go in a rainbow order just to kind of see how these blend out. Now, I wasn't sure what to expect. This is the first time I'm doing this. So I'm just adding a teeny tiny bit of ink. And typically when I do any ink blending, and normally it's either with distress inks or distress oxides, I like to slowly build up my color, because usually once you go in and add too much, it is what it is. It's there. There's no taking it away. So the first time around, as I work down my card panel, I'm going to go in rainbow order, but I'm going in with a very light hand. And these are blending very nicely, but I got such a beautiful background with like pastel colors. I did go a little heavy-handed with the green on the one side, but that's fine. I'm just testing out. So I'm super, super happy with the way that you can control these inks. I feel like you can determine how dark or how light you want to be a lot easier than with other inks that are on the market. So I was super happy with my little pastel background here. But next I wanted to test how dark I can get the ink. So if you've ever watched my channel before, you've probably seen me do some ink blending, and typically I work in one direction. Once I reach that other end of the card panel, I work in the opposite direction and pretty much work with two colors at a time, making sure that they blend nicely with each other, and then I'll kind of move back in the opposite direction on my card panel. And I'm pretty much doing the same thing here. I'm just going in with a heavier hand and making sure that the two colors that are touching blend with one another. So I'm making sure that this blue and purple blend well, and then I'll move into the green and making sure that the green and the blue blend nicely together. So you can see that my background is getting a lot darker and a lot more vibrant. And now my ink pads are very juicy. They're brand new, but I still feel like I have a whole lot of control over how much ink I'm adding. I am constantly adding more ink to the brush because I just didn't want to add too much at one time, but there's a learning curve with any new medium that we use, so I'm okay with that. So you can see that definitely my background is completely changing now, but my colors are blending beautifully together. I absolutely love the way these are working. Now I'm just reaching the top part of my panel here, moving on to this orange color, and then finally that red, which obviously you can see that if you go with a very light hand, it's a pale pink, and it's such a pretty pale pink. I absolutely love these colors. So these react with water, obviously. So once my blending was done, I wanted to kind of spatter on some water in the background and dab that up with a paper towel, pretty much like we do with a lot of our backgrounds, but I wanted to see how these react. So I'm just going to take a wet paintbrush, spatter some water on, and dab that up with a paper towel, and look at this. This is unbelievable. This is definitely giving distress inks and distress oxides a run for their money. I love that background. So finally, we're going to test out some watercolors. These are supposed to be actually watercolor. So I'm going to stamp out this nail polish bottle from Honeybee Stamps just because it's a very simple image and I figured this would be a good one to test. I'm stamping with the blackout ink, also by Ink on 3. This is my favorite ink for Copic coloring, for watercoloring, for everything basically. So I have my paintbrush here, and my paintbrush is a little curved because I left it brush side down in a jar, and so I'm probably going to go out of the lines a little bit, but that's user error, not the inks. So I'm getting this nice and damp. I'm just dabbing that off onto a paper towel so it's not soaking wet. And I'm just going to dab my paintbrush onto the corner, right onto this ink pad, and pick up a little bit of that pigment. And I'm going right onto my dry paper. This is watercolor paper and it is dry. I have not put a layer of water on it. And I'm working on one side of the bottle itself and then kind of blending that out. And you can see that I'm getting a nice variation in color here. I started off a little bit darker, and then once my paintbrush starts to dry up a little bit, I am going to go back in and start from the other side. And you'll see I'm doing the same exact thing, and I'm getting a nice variation in color here. So I have a little bit of a highlight towards the right hand side of that bottle, which normally would have anyway with something, an image like this. And I absolutely love it. but I wanted a little bit more contrast. You guys probably know me. I love my contrast. So I'm going to go in and add a little bit more of that ink to the left-hand side, just to make that left-hand side all the way to the left a little bit darker. And I'm just, now my paper is damp a little bit, so it's going to kind of spread a little bit easier on its own. Now, these are supposed to be artist grade watercolors in an ink pad. And I have to say, I'm not a watercolorist. I'm not an expert watercolorist. I love to do it, but I'm still practicing. I'm no expert. But I have to say, she's 100% right. These work just like a tube of watercolor. They're amazing. So I'm going to pretty much do the same thing with the top or the cap. I'm not sure what you would refer to this as, but the top portion of the nail polish bottle. And I'm going to bring out the black ink, but I'm pretty much going to do the same thing. And I'm just going to kind of spread that color out with a damp paintbrush, leaving that highlight kind of sort of in the same area that I left the highlight on the nail polish bottle itself. And again, I wanted a little bit more contrast, so I was able to go in and add even more as the paper was damp, and that will kind of spread on its own. I can't even tell you how perfect these are. This is definitely a must-have in the craft room. We want an ink pad that does it all. This is an ink pad that does it all. So I wanted to test out how well they spread out on just like if you were going to create a background. So I wet the paper just in a little section with clean water. Then I'm going to go in with the blue because I feel like this is one of the more vibrant colors. And I'm just going to drop in some of that color just to kind of see how that spread. And you can see it does spread just like watercolors do. And you don't get the chalky look like you do with the Distress Oxides, but you still get the vibrancy. I absolutely love these inks. Absolutely. I'm like so impressed with these. So, well, that is it. That is a quick look at the new inks by Ink on 3. I'll leave the link below. I know these are going to probably sell out quick if they haven't already sold out, but I will link everything below. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me. I am going to go play with these a little bit more, so hopefully I can actually answer them. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Bye.